Every single morning, without thinking about it, you are part of the most complex maintenance operation in the history of this planet. Somewhere right now, someone is patching a road, someone is monitoring a reactor, someone is pumping water out of a tunnel so a city doesn't flood. Billions of tiny, mundane acts of upkeep, and the whole system depends on all of them continuing every day. So what happens the moment they stop? Imagine that tomorrow morning, every human being on Earth vanishes. There's no catastrophe or warning. The 8 billion of us are just absent, as if we were never here. What would the world do with itself? How long before our cities crumble? How long before nature reclaims what we spent centuries building? And what would any of it reveal about how fragile or how permanent our mark on this planet really is? The answers move through timescales that are hard to hold in your head. Hours, then decades, then geological ages. And each one reframes something you thought you understood about the world outside your window. Modern civilization looks permanent from the inside, but it's actually running on the thinnest possible margin. Power grids don't store electricity. They balance supply and demand in real time, second by second, managed by engineers watching dashboards around the clock. Without those engineers, the grid goes unstable within hours. Automated failsafes cut power to prevent cascading damage, and by the end of the first day, most of the world is dark. The loss of electricity triggers a chain reaction that hits hardest in the places you'd least expect. Water treatment plants stop pumping. Without pressurized pipes, city water systems drain and contaminate. Hospitals running on backup generators exhaust their fuel within days. The internet, physically held up by data centers that need constant cooling, starts going offline region by region as the cooling systems fail and servers overheat. But the most alarming problem in those first 72 hours is nuclear. There are around 440 operating reactors on Earth, and most of them have automatic shutdown systems that engage without human input. The reactors themselves go quiet. What doesn't go quiet are the spent fuel cooling pools, vast tanks of radioactive material that need continuous pumping of water to stay cool. Without power, without operators, those pools begin to heat up within days. Many of them would eventually boil dry, releasing radiation across their surrounding regions in slow, invisible plumes that nobody is around to measure or evacuate from. We built systems powerful enough to run civilization and dangerous enough to poison it. And they require human attention every single moment to stay on the right side of that line. Nature doesn't wait for a formal invitation. Within weeks of our disappearance, the cracks we'd been patching in roads and pavements start widening as frost and plant roots do their work unimpeded. Weeds colonize the gaps in suburban streets. Grass grows through the tarmac of airport runways. Lawns that were mowed every fortnight become knee-high meadows by summer and dense thickets by the following year. The animal world reorganizes itself with startling speed. Livestock locked in barns and feedlots face a grim first few weeks, but the animals that escape or were already semi-wild begin adapting almost immediately. Domestic pigs, which carry enough wild genetics to go feral within a single generation, are rooting through suburban gardens within months. Feral dog packs form in cities, filling the same ecological role that wolves and jackals occupy in the wild. Within a decade, predator populations begin recovering in regions where we'd suppressed them for centuries. Cities near water face a particular kind of transformation. Most major cities, London, New York, Amsterdam, Bangkok, sit on land that is actively being kept dry by pumping systems running around the clock. Without those pumps, the water table rises. Basements flood first, then ground floors, then entire lower neighborhoods. The subway tunnels of New York would be completely submerged within a few years, turned into long, dark rivers threading under a city that is slowly becoming wetland. What you'd be watching, if you could watch it, is the revelation of a truth that was always there. Civilization isn't a state of affairs. It's an ongoing act of will, performed collectively, every single day. 100 years on, the skylines are gone. Steel corrodes faster than most people realize once the protective coatings and maintenance schedules disappear. The Eiffel Tower, left to the elements, would be a rusted stump within a few decades. Glass towers shatter as their frames warp and buckle. Wooden framed houses collapse into their own foundations, becoming mounds of soil enriched with the organic material of everything we left inside them. Concrete lasts longer, but it isn't immortal. Water seeps into microscopic cracks, freezes, expands, and fractures the structure from the inside. Without repairs, a concrete motorway overpass has maybe 200 years before it becomes rubble. The Great Suspension Bridges, the Golden Gate, the Humber, the Bosphorus, lose their cables to corrosion and collapse into the water below within a century or two. What survives are the things built before we learned to be clever about materials. Roman roads, laid in stone 2,000 years ago, remain faintly visible as ridges under European forests. The Great Wall of China crumbles at its earthen sections, but persists in its stone stretches, running through a rewilded landscape that has entirely forgotten what it was for. The pyramids of Giza, already 4,000 years old when we disappeared, will still be standing when the next ice age begins. And then there is the plastic. Trillions of microplastic particles are already threaded through every ocean, every soil layer, every food chain on Earth. They don't biodegrade on any timescale that matters to us. A geologist reading the Earth's sedimentary record in 10 million years, if such a being exists, will find a thin, unmistakable layer of synthetic polymer running through the rock, sandwiched between the layers like a signature. That layer will be us. A thin stripe of strange chemistry marking the exact window of time when a peculiar species of primate briefly dominated a small planet and then vanished. Here is the thing that's hardest to sit with. The Earth doesn't have a preference. When people imagine nature healing after humanity disappears, they're projecting a kind of relief onto a system that doesn't experience relief. Ecosystems recover not because they want to, but because the pressures causing damage have been removed, and biological and chemical processes simply continue doing what they've always done. The carbon dioxide we've already added to the atmosphere lingers for hundreds of thousands of years. Sea levels keep rising. Coral reefs continue to decline for decades before the chemistry finally shifts in their favor. The recovery of the natural world is real, but it happens on geological timescales, not human ones. In 10,000 years, biodiversity will likely be richer than it is today, with species filling every niche we vacated or created. The ruins of our cities, slowly digested by forest, will become some of the most ecologically productive land on the continent. The rubble and rebar acting as artificial cliffs and cave systems for bats, birds, and insects. In 1 million years, the surface of the Earth will hold almost no visible trace of us. In 5 million years, the species that evolved from the survivors of our era might find that strange polymer stripe in the rocks and spend generations arguing about what made it. We will have been a geological event, a brief, intense, planet-altering episode, like a volcanic superplume or a meteor impact, except that we wrote poetry about it. We disappear, the world moves on, and it turns out we weren't necessary after all. But there's another way to read the same facts. The world doesn't need us, which means that everything we've built here, the cities, the languages, the accumulated knowledge, the art, the sheer improbable fact of a species that can ask questions about its own absence, none of that is inevitable. It exists because we chose to build it and maintain it collectively against the constant pull of entropy. We are not the purpose of the Earth, but we might be the only things in the known universe currently wondering what the purpose of anything is. And that strange, fragile, ongoing act of wondering seems worth protecting. If this made you look at the world around you slightly differently, that's exactly what we were going for. Subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes like this one.